Hi, everybody. How you doing? All right, so this may look familiar to you. Here he goes with the stupid contracts again. That's right. I'm very sorry. We're doing this again because it's stuck in my brain and I can't get it out. Sometimes I just get stuck on stuff. We got the Jordan Love contract coming up eventually, hopefully. I'm hoping by the time training camp starts-ish. And I want to make sure that, because it's something that I hadn't really super thought through, right? I knew, let's back up for context. I knew that looking at, for example, average salary is not the best way to look at a contract, right? And I promise you this is new stuff, not the same old thing, so please don't click off and say I heard him say this already. So $55 million per year is not necessarily the best way to look at it, because then we look at Trevor Lawrence and we say he got the Joe Burrow contract, and no, he didn't. Because $55 million a year in 2024 money compared to 2023 is like 64, right? Because the salary cap goes up. So anyways, went through this whole thing. If you didn't see that video or hear that podcast or whatever, you can go back and find it. It wasn't that long ago. Within the last week, I would say I did that whole thing. And so what I said was percentage of cap is the better way to look at it because it adjusts for the time period. And I mentioned offhand, like, look, there's a ton of other variables. I haven't really thought through how to better come up with something, but this is a much better way to look at it, and it is. And so you can see the massive gap between Joe Burrow, for example, and Trevor Lawrence, and the fact that Dak and Deshaun and Kyler and Hurts and Mahomes and Lamar and Herbert. It's funny how some guys, it's like you use their first name and some guys it's their last name. Like you wouldn't say Jackson. Like who the heck is it? Like Lamar? And then you wouldn't say Patrick because that sounds stupid. Like it's Mahomes. Mahomes and Lamar and Herbert and Allen and Burrow. There's a huge gap in between them because the fact of the matter is 2024 money and 2023 money are very, very different. So anyways, I went through that whole thing, and I this is part of the reason why there wasn't a podcast today, yesterday, whatever, on Sunday, because I just got it stuck in my head, and I started to like visualize it, and I literally had paint out. Let me just show you a little visual, not that this is necessary, but I'm sitting here, and I'm just trying to draw what's in my head, and I'm like, okay, so we got $55 million a year, and that's flat, and then you got the salary cap that goes like this. And then I forget what else I was... and then I was thinking about, like, okay, so the actual cap hit compared to the average per year lags, right? Because you're not going to pay him this, you're going to pay it, so it kind of runs like this. And then if you look at the year, it kind of goes like this. And, like, I couldn't quite flesh it out. And then I kind of got it. And again, we're just taking a step forward. This is not... I'm sure you get some cap people or some math people in here, and they're like, well, technically... And it's like, yeah, dude, I get it. We can do better. But I came up with something to take us a step further. And the Packers cap specialist, I'm completely blanking on his name right now. Anyways, Ken Griffey Jr.? I can't remember. Anyways, one of the things he mentioned is if you were to give, for example, Jordan Love $55 million this year, it would not even be the same as Trevor Lawrence. You say, well, yes, it is, because it's 2024 and 55, and those are the two variables, and they line up, right? Obviously, you got guarantees and all that stuff. But there's also a big variable here, and that is how many years. And really, this is not correct. It's not 5. Look at this. 2024 to 2030. Is that 5 years? No, that's 7 years. Why? Because he already had years on his contract. That's why. It was an extension. So the contract, the extension length is 5 years, but that doesn't include the 2 years on it. So if you give Jordan a 5-year contract or 5-year extension compared to Trevor, you're talking about a 7-year compared to, I think, a 6-year, because Jordan has 1 year left. So that factors in as well. And so I thought, okay, so how do we do this now? How do we add all these things together? And here's what I came up with. Percentage of the cap is still important. The problem is, when we see $55 million, we think $55 million today in today's money. So we think, what if we had $55 million boom, that just smacked our cap today. It would be catastrophic. And that's why we just go into this tailspin of like, oh, I can't even imagine. It would be so horrible. But that's not what happens. We know that we stagger it. And so the question becomes, if you look at the average, 55, and then you take what is the, trying to think how to verbalize this here. If you go from the start date, so 2023, and you have to know what the salary caps were in these years, 2023, 2024, and I also projected out 2025, 6, 7. I don't know these numbers, but I use past numbers to project into the future. The point is, though, what is $55 million as a percentage of the cap today? It's 24.47. That's a lot. What is it going to be in, or what is it in 2024? It's not 24.47. It is, as we know, where is it? Trevor Lawrence, it's 21.53. What is it going to be next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that? And then what you do very simply is you average them out. Because what I want to know is, what is going to be the average cap hit? Because I want to know the actual pain point. Because when you average those years out, what you get is what you're probably going to have as a cap hit each one of those years. We're just spreading it out over those years. Because again, we're not getting 24.47. That's nonsense. We're also not going to be on the low end of the spectrum if you took $55 million and applied it to the final year. That would be too low. But if you average it, then we get a better idea of what you're getting each one of those years, and we can really get what this really is a contract pain index. How much is this contract going to hurt us? Because remember, what I said about this is I want to know how much pain we're willing to give you, because that's how much value we put in you. Right? If I'm willing to give you $10 on my wallet compared to $100, it makes a big difference, or $1,000, because it has a big pain point on how much money I have for myself. And it's the same for this, how much money I'm going to have for everybody else. It shows how much I value you. So if it's the exact same thing, we're just upgrading it to factor in all the years. So I came up with this little guy here. So let's use Trevor Lawrence for the sake of being a little bit easier. So I'm going to use practical guarantees. That's the other thing. I'm not really going to use the 55. That's not the best number either. So one of the other things I did, that's so instead of 275 over 5 years, I just said how much is practically guaranteed over the entirety of the 7 years. And that's $200 million for Trevor Lawrence. So it's $200 million over 7 years. So I created this little guy. So in millions, we got 200. We've got 7 years, and the year started was 2024, right? So here you go. Here is the breakdown. This is the average percentage of cap, 8.94%. And then you can see the full breakdown in the tables here. 2024 is this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. So these are, and again, it's not 55 million. We're looking at the total guarantees, which is 200, and that's over 7 years. So this is kind of what you would expect year to year. So in this is how much I would expect the cap to hit us this year and next year and next year, and you just apply that to whatever the salary cap is. So if the salary cap is $255.4 million, you multiply it by 8.94. It should give you a general idea of how much we're going to get hit each year if you just did it perfectly evenly. But it doesn't matter if you do or don't. You can whatever. So now we have an era-adjusted metric, because I can go back to Brett Favre and do this. Actually, let me see if I can. I don't remember if I put this into the code or not. I know I used to have it where it went all the way back, but let's just try it. When did he sign? Like 1997? And it was, let's say 50. I don't know, and then a 5-year contract or something. I just want to see if it works. It's not working, so I must not have. I'll fix it so that it works. But it's era adjusted, so it doesn't matter what year you do. And it gives you a pain point to show you how much as a percentage of the cap are we probably going to be giving to this quarterback every single year. Okay, so then I went through and I did all the quarterbacks. So as you can see, and so now you can actually readjust how much these things are costing. But you've got years. And this is not years of the contract. This is this minus this, which is 5 years. Or in the case of Joe Burrow, 7, Justin Herbert, 7. the practical guarantees, the average percent of the cap, and then what I did here is relative cap hit. So this is a cool metric too, because as I said before, if you look at 55 million, we think 55 million smacking our cap in 2024 and how much that would suck. And that's why it's so shocking. But in reality, that's not what the cap hit is going to be. So we think in today's dollars. So for example, Joe Burrow, his contract in today's dollars would be a $28.4 million cap hit. Right? That's about what you're expecting. And I don't know what his cap hit is this year. But that's about how much it's hitting the cap. If you look at Aaron Rodgers, it's about 26. Matt Stafford, 27. Trevor Lawrence is 22. Again, a much lower contract. Mahomes, see, and this is the other thing. You say Mahomes, well, he had a massive contract. It was over 12 years. Did you know Mahomes still has the furthest out contract? Trevor Lawrence just signed his contract. Trevor Lawrence's contract starts 1 year sooner than Pat Mahomes' deal. And you could say that that's a flaw in the system if you want. The only real flaw is that it doesn't take into account risk. The reality is, this is how much you're kind of expecting the cap hit to be. Now, he's probably going to get multiple contracts throughout that because they're going to keep readjusting it because they have to, because it's actually a really low number. The fact of the matter is, and you can already kind of see it. If you look at, I don't know what is his average salary here. Let's go to averages. Where is Pat Mahomes? So he's at $45 million. Now, there was a time when that was a shocking amount of money, but we've blown past that, and we're what, 5 years into this 12-year contract or whatever it's going to be to 2031. Can you imagine how much $45 million is going to be in 10 more years? It's going to be like nothing. So it's not a flaw in the system, other than it doesn't take into account the risk associated with giving a player this much time in a contract and all that. It really does reflect how low that contract is, but you have to have confidence that you're willing to do that and obviously take on the risk, which this doesn't take into account. What else are we going to... so the other thing that I wanted to look at is you can kind of see, like, these are the normal numbers, and then we've got some that just blow things out of the water. So actually, Jared Goff is really on the high end of things, his contract. Then you got Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's contract really is a staggeringly high contract. 14.14% on average over the duration of the contract. $185 million in practical guarantees. And look at this. Compared to Jared Goff, who actually has a really big contract, compared to Jared Goff, it's $15 million more, roughly, and he started it a year earlier. So it's 2023 money compared to 2024 money. This is huge. Dak Prescott, this one surprised me a lot. This one surprised nobody. Everybody guessed it when I asked it on social media. Dak Prescott's contract, this is in 2021. It's only a 4-year contract, which is a big part of that. But over 4 years, $126 million in guarantees. That's $15.39 million. This is a staggeringly high contract. And then, so if you look at this, like, so this is kind of your main, you're looking low end 25, high end 28, 29. This is kind of the general range, I would say, of most normal quarterbacks. You can see Daniel Jones, how low that is. And even these are, Derek Carr is low. Rodgers is kind of deflated because it had money on it already. So you can kind of just say 27 to 29 is sort of the real quarterback range. But if you look, the massive jump here to these two, and then even from these two, look how huge of a gap that is. We're talking like this is double. This is almost double what you would consider reasonable. $230 million in practical guarantees. I think it was fully guaranteed, wasn't it? So it would be the same number. $230 million, 5 years in 2022 money. This is so unbelievably stupid. And not only because the guy sucks, but the thing that I love about this too is you can really see what are good and high and low and all that stuff contracts. So you can see Daniel Jones really didn't get that much. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, was actually lower than Daniel Jones when you think about it. And you look, well, that's ridiculous. It's 200 compared to 92. And there is an element of like, what is real money? Like, yeah, great for Daniel Jones as far as like percentages and all that. But, you know, you got Trevor Lawrence got $200 million that will be in his bank account at some point. And that there is, again, the time thing is kind of the variable here, because time can be positive as well. It's not only just negative for the player and positive for the team. But when I kind of thought through that, I figured it'd be better to just have two metrics. You've got the pain metric, and then you have a time metric. Figure that out on your own, or maybe I will, because it's going to continue to drive me nuts until I get this perfected. But I'm perfectly comfortable with where it's at for right now. But still, this is kind of where you can see the normal range. And now, kind of similar to what I did last time, you look at it and say, okay, what makes sense for Jordan Love? So if we want to fall into this, let's say 25 to 29 range, we obviously don't want to play up here. Probably wouldn't be right to put him down here. And again, you're probably looking more in this range. Maybe it's lower because we know less, so we'll keep it here. But this is sort of what we're looking at. So, real quick, let's say they've got what? 5. So let's call this 6 years. Because remember, we're going to give them the same 5-year contract. Let's just say hypothetically, we give him a 5-year contract, but he has 1 year already on there. The year is obviously 2024. And then nope, that's not it. 2024. And then what else are we looking for here? So we want the 2024 cap hit to be around 11.48-ish. We could reverse engineer this, but I'm doing this live, so I'd rather not. Where's Trevor Lawrence? Oh, he's way down here. So around 10-ish%, I guess. So let's just start with 200 and see where that puts us. So that's about it. So 5 years, 200 in guarantees is roughly about what you're looking at. Now, again, this is everybody's looking at like, well, what the heck does that mean? I don't know, because I know everybody wants.
Someone is at the back door.
Shut up. Everybody wants this number. They want the per year statistics or whatever. And remember, Trevor Lawrence did get 200 in practical guarantees, and it ended up being $55 million a year. But remember, that's with one additional year on it. I mean, it's a 5-year contract. I don't know, but anyways, this will be the way to kind of look at it. But just keep in mind, because we've also been saying, or I've been saying, one of the things to consider is maybe a shorter contract, because we don't really know. If I were to bring this down to 5 years, which would be a 4-year contract plus his one additional year, look at how much the percentage goes up. It goes up to 13.4%. And so you look at 13.4, we're getting closer to this range. So it's a real dangerous thing. Now, granted, you would probably just say, well, this, the number would come down or whatever, but then it becomes a really small contract. Maybe it becomes a fake contract where the guarantees are actually, lower, somewhere in this range, but we have a lot of fake funny money on there. I don't know. But anyways, I had fun. Building this guy out. I'm going to try to make this tool available to you if you want to play around with it, if you find it interesting, but that's kind of a